12.20 at Savatthi. Monks, I will teach you dependent origination and dependently arisen phenomena. Listen and attend closely. I will speak. Yes, Venerable Sir, the monks replied. And what monks is dependent origination? With birth as condition, aging and death comes to be. Whether there is an arising of Tathagatas or no arising of Tathagatas, that element still persists. The stableness of the Dhamma, the fixed cause of the Dhamma, specific conditionality. A Tathagata awakens to this and breaks through to it. Having done so, he explains it, teaches it, proclaims it, establishes it, discloses it, analyzes it, elucidates it. And he says, see, with birth as condition, monks, aging and death. With existence as condition, birth. With clinging as condition, existence. With craving as condition, clinging. With feeling as condition, craving. With contact as condition, feeling. With the six sense basis as condition, contact. Mentality, materiality as condition, the six sense basis. With consciousness as condition, mentality and materiality. With volition as condition, consciousness. With ignorance as condition, volition. Whether there is an arising of Tathagatas or no arising of Tathagatas, the element still persists. The stableness of the Dhamma, the fixed cause of the Dhamma, specific conditionality. The Tathagata awakens to this and breaks through to it. Having done so, he explains it, teaches it, proclaims it, establishes it, discloses it, analyzes it, elucidates it, and he says, see, with ignorance as condition, monks, volition. Thus, monks, the actuality in this, the inerrancy, the not otherwiseness, specific conditionality, this is called dependent origination. And what monks are the dependently arisen phenomena? Aging and death, monks, is impermanent, condition, dependently arisen, subject to destruction, vanishing, fading away and cessation. Similarly, birth is impermanent, existence is impermanent, clinging is impermanent, craving is impermanent, feeling is impermanent, contact is impermanent, six sense bases are impermanent, mentality, materiality is impermanent, consciousness is impermanent, volition is impermanent, ignorance is impermanent, condition, dependently arisen, subject to destruction, vanishing, fading away and cessation. These monks are called dependently arisen phenomena. When monks, a noble disciple has clearly seen with correct wisdom, as it really is, this dependent origination and these dependently arisen phenomena, it is impossible that he will run back into the past, thinking, did I exist in the past? Did I not exist in the past? What was I in the past? How was I in the past? Having been what did I become in the past? Or that he will run forward into the future, thinking, will I exist in the future? Will I not exist in the future? What will I be in the future? How will I be in the future? Having been what will I become in the future? Or that he will now be inwardly confused about the present, thus, do I exist? Do I not exist? What am I? How am I? This being, where has it come from? And where will it go? For what reason is this impossible? Because, monks, the noble disciple has clearly seen with correct wisdom, as it really is, this dependent origination and these dependently arisen phenomena. That's the end of the sutta. So here the Buddha says, whether Buddhas arise in the world or Buddhas do not arise, the fixed law of Dhamma is always there. Whether Buddha is here to explain it to us or Buddha is not here to explain it to us, we are all bound by these laws of the Dhamma. Dhamma is just about reality, the truth about existence. It's just that the Buddha has become enlightened. He has seen through all this, so he explains it to us. But whether he does explain or he does not explain, we are all bound by all these laws of the Dhamma, or the laws of the universe. So among them is this dependent origination, that suffering arises because of these conditions. And these conditions, the Buddha says, all are impermanent. dependently arisen. That means suffering itself, birth itself, being, clinging, craving, all this is impermanent. So because it is impermanent, it can change. So if we understand how to dismantle these 12 links, then we are freed from the round of rebirths. So in the end, the Buddha says, if a person understands the Dhamma and sees that everything is dependently arisen, then he will not speculate about himself in the past or in the future and all that. He's only concerned with the here and now. But most people, because we don't understand the Dhamma, we are all concerned about the past, the present, and all our the future and all the things in the world that we think are I and mine, all the things that belong to us, we think we cannot let go. But actually, the Buddha says nothing actually belongs to us. We came empty-handed and we'll be going off empty-handed. Even this body does not belong to us. How can anything belong to us when this body itself also doesn't belong to us? .38 at Savatthi, Buddha said, monks, what one intends and what one plans and whatever one has a tendency towards, this becomes a basis for the maintenance of consciousness. When there is a basis for us, when there is a basis, there is a support for the establishing of consciousness. When consciousness is established and has come to growth, there is the production of future renewed existence. When there is the production of future renewed existence, future birth, aging and death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, displeasure and despair come to be. Such is the origin of this whole mass of suffering. If monks, one does not intend and one does not plan, but one still has a tendency towards something, this becomes a basis for the maintenance of consciousness. When there is a basis, there is a support for the establishing of consciousness. When consciousness is established, has come to grow, there is the production of future renewed existence. So, such is the origin of this whole mass of suffering. But monks, when one does not intend, and one does not plan, and one does not have a tendency towards anything, no basis exists for the maintenance of consciousness. When there is no basis, there is no support for the establishing of consciousness. When consciousness is unestablished and does not come to growth, there is no production of future renewed existence. When there is no production of future renewed existence, future birth, aging and death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, displeasure and despair cease. Such is the cessation of this whole mass of suffering. So here the Buddha says there are three things that are nutriments for the maintenance of consciousness. Firstly, what we intend. The Pali word is ceteti, from the word cetana. And what one plans, pakapeti. And whatever one has a tendency towards, anuseti, from the word anusaya, tendency. So, these three things supports consciousness. What one intends, what one plans, and what one has a tendency towards. So there are these three things. Then there is a support for the establishing of consciousness, and then consciousness comes to grow. But the second part, if one does not intend and one does not plan, but one still has a tendency towards something, this also becomes a basis for the maintenance of consciousness. So, even if you don't have plan, you don't have intention, but you still have a tendency towards something, meaning you still have a craving for something, then consciousness still continues, is maintained. So these three things, what you intend, what you plan, this could be like sometimes when a person is dying, he still has unfulfilled ambitions, still want to do this, still wants to do that. This is very common. Even in the suttas it is stated that even devas, having lifespan of millions of years, after such a long lifespan now, when they are about to die, and then they panic, and then they think, oh, they still haven't done this, they still haven't done that. So this is the first part, what you intend and what you plan. But however, if at the moment of dying you don't have all this planning and intention, yet if you still have a tendency towards something, that means you still haven't let go of craving, then this consciousness is still maintained. So you can see from here, it's not easy to become liberated from this flow of consciousness. And this flow of consciousness creates samsara, creates the world. So that's why one has to be totally cool, totally, like earlier we read, you have to be disenchanted with the world, and then you got to have revulsion for the world, then you got to have viraga, dispassion towards the world, totally tired of the world, and then only you can become liberated. So for most people, you have not come to that stage for most people. So the first stage is to attain stream entry. If you attain stream entry, then you have entered the path of the holy ones, the Aryans. And then you have a maximum of 7 more lifetimes. And as you go through these 7 more lifetimes, you become more and more disenchanted with the world. And then you slowly become more and more dispassionate towards the world, and one day you will enter Nibbana.